Sit next to me. The queen grabbed my arm and shocked everyone. The unexpected summons. Dante Marchesi wiped the charcoal dust from his hands, squinting at the architectural sketches spread across the stone bench in the palace gardens. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the olive trees, and he was so absorbed in calculating the structural requirements for the East Wing's restoration that he didn't hear the footsteps approaching until a throat cleared pointedly behind him. Master Marchesi? A palace attendant stood there, livery immaculate, expression carefully neutral. Her Majesty Queen Celestine requests your presence at tonight's royal banquet. Dante's charcoal stick clattered to the ground. There must be some mistake. I'm just the architect working on the renovations. Surely you mean Master Petrov, the chief royal builder? No mistake, sir. Your name was specifically requested. The attendant produced a cream-colored envelope bearing the royal seal. 7 o'clock sharp. Evening formal attire is required. As the attendant departed, Dante broke the seal with trembling fingers. The invitation was genuine, written in elegant script on expensive paper. He had no evening formal attire. Everything he owned was practical, designed for a workman's life, not palace banquets. The Queen's birthday celebration was the social event of the season, attended exclusively by nobility, foreign dignitaries, and the kingdom's most prominent citizens. He was none of those things. By 6:30, Dante had borrowed a formal jacket from his landlord's son, polished his only decent pair of boots until they gleamed, and made himself as presentable as possible. He arrived at the grand hall with minutes to spare, immediately feeling like an imposter among the silk gowns and jewel-encrusted formal were surrounding him. The hall was magnificent, vaulted ceilings painted with frescoes, massive chandeliers dripping with crystals, and tables laden with delicacies Dante couldn't name. He found a spot near the back behind a marble column, hoping to remain invisible. Trumpets announced the Queen's arrival. The crowd parted like a silk curtain, and Dante's breath caught in his chest. Queen Celestine Valoria descended the grand staircase like moonlight given human form. Her gown was midnight blue, embroidered with silver thread that caught the candlelight with every movement. Dark hair was swept up in an intricate style, revealing the elegant line of her neck. But it was her eyes, intelligent, searching, fierce, that held Dante captive. Those eyes swept the assembled crowd and stopped on him. Time seemed to suspend as Celestine's gaze locked with his across the sea of nobility. A slight smile curved her lips. Then, to the collective gasp of every person in the room, the Queen of Astoria walked directly toward him, ignoring the extended hands of lords and ladies, bypassing Lord Victor Ashford, whose face turned purple with indignation. She stopped before Dante, close enough that he could smell her perfume, jasmine and something exotic he couldn't identify. Without a word, she extended her hand. Not for him to kiss but to take. Sit next to me, Queen Celestine said, her voice clear and unwavering, meant to carry through the shocked silence. Dante's mind raced. Every eye in the kingdom's highest social circles was upon them. Refusing would be an unthinkable insult. Accepting would mark him as either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. He took her hand. It was warm, steady, and her fingers curled around his with unexpected strength. The whispers erupted like a brushfire as Celestine led him through the crowd to the high table, reserved for royalty alone. She guided him to the seat of honor at her right hand, a position traditionally held by the most important guest or a potential suitor. Lord Victor's chair scraped loudly as he stood, his handsome features twisted with fury. Your Majesty, surely there's been some confusion. No confusion, Lord Ashford. Celestine settled into her throne-like chair with the grace of someone utterly comfortable with power. Master Marchesi is my invited guest. I trust that won't be a problem? It was phrased as a question but delivered as a statement. Victor's jaw clenched, but he bowed stiffly and returned to his seat further down the table, his eyes promising retribution. As the first course was served, Dante leaned slightly toward Celestine, keeping his voice low. Your Majesty, I don't understand. You will, she murmured, her eyes fixed forward on the assembled court, that mysterious smile still playing at the corners of her mouth. Before the night is over, Dante Marchesi, you will understand everything. Behind palace walls. The banquet lasted 3 excruciating hours. Dante endured the stares, the whispered speculation, and Lord Victor's murderous glares while trying to navigate silverware he'd never seen before and courses he couldn't pronounce. Through it all, Queen Celestine remained poised, occasionally leaning close to explain a dish or making subtle conversation that felt surprisingly natural despite the absurdity of their situation. When the final toast was raised and the musicians began playing, Celestine stood gracefully. Master Marchesi, I'd like to discuss the architectural plans for the palace library. Please accompany me. It wasn't a request. As they left the grand hall together, Dante could feel Victor's fury radiating like heat from a forge. The royal library was a sanctuary of leather-bound volumes and polished wood, illuminated by candles that cast dancing shadows across the walls. The moment the heavy doors closed behind them, Celestine's formal posture relaxed slightly. "You can breathe now," she said with a hint of amusement. "We're alone." "Your Majesty, I still don't understand why." "Celestine," she interrupted, moving toward a table where palace blueprints were already spread out. "When we're alone, call me Celestine." Dante's throat went dry. "That would be highly inappropriate. So was seating you at the high table, yet I did it anyway." She traced a finger along one of the blueprints. His blueprints, he realized with a start. "I've been reviewing your restoration proposals. They're brilliant. You don't just see buildings as structures, do you? You see them as living spaces where real people will work, love, grieve, celebrate. You actually read my proposals?" Dante moved closer, drawn by genuine curiosity now. "Most nobles never." "I'm not most nobles." Celestine looked up at him, and in the candlelight, her eyes held a vulnerability he hadn't seen in the grand hall. "I'm a 26-year-old widow who inherited a throne I never expected, surrounded by men who think I need their guidance, their protection, their control." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Do you know what it's like to be constantly watched, judged, manipulated? To have every word analyzed, every gesture politicized?" Dante found himself standing close enough to see the fine embroidery on her gown, close enough to notice the slight tremor in her hands. "No, but I know what it's like to be invisible. To pour your heart into something beautiful and have people see only a commoner who should know his place. You're not invisible to me." Celestine's hand moved from the blueprint to rest on the table beside his. "I've watched you work in the gardens for weeks. The way you sketch with such focus, the gentleness with which you treat even the apprentices. You create beauty because you love it, not because someone's paying you to impress them." Their hands were inches apart on the polished wood. Dante could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "Why did you seat me beside you tonight?" "Because I'm tired of pretending. Tired of performing. For one evening, I wanted to sit beside someone real." Her finger traced the calluses on his palm, the rough evidence of years working with stone and wood. "Someone whose hands show the truth of who he is." The touch sent electricity through Dante's body. He should step back, maintain proper distance, remember his place. Instead, he turned his hand over, allowing her fingers to explore the weathered landscape of his palm. "Celestine." Her name felt dangerous on his lips. She looked up at him, her face so close now that he could count the individual candle flames reflected in her dark eyes. "Yes." The library doors burst open. Lady Rosanna rushed in, her usually composed expression frantic. "Your Majesty, forgive the intrusion, but there's urgent news." Celestine and Dante stepped apart as if burned. "What is it, Rosanna?" "Lord Victor has called an emergency council meeting for tomorrow morning. He's claiming." Rosanna's eyes flicked to Dante apologetically. "He's claiming you've brought disgrace to the crown by showing favoritism to a commoner. Several noble houses are supporting his concerns." Celestine's expression hardened into the royal mask Dante had seen her wear in public. "Let them talk. I answer to no one." "Your Majesty, with respect, you answer to the kingdom." Rosanna's voice was gentle but firm. "Victor is gathering support among the noble houses. If enough of them unite against you." "They can't remove a sitting queen," Celestine said, but Dante heard the uncertainty beneath her words. "No, but they can make ruling impossible." Rosanna looked genuinely worried. "Please think carefully about your next moves." After Rosanna departed, Celestine stood at the window, her back to Dante, shoulders tense. "You should go. This was a mistake." "Was it?" Dante surprised himself with his boldness. "I've put you in danger. Put myself in danger. For what? A moment of honesty?" She laughed bitterly. "Queens don't get moments. We get lifetimes of duty." Dante wanted to go to her, to turn her around and tell her that one honest moment was worth more than a lifetime of performance. But Rosanna's warning echoed in his mind. Instead, he bowed, a proper, formal bow, and left the library, the warmth of her touch still burning on his palm. Behind him, he didn't see Celestine press her forehead against the cool glass, whispering his name into the darkness. The political storm. The emergency council meeting lasted until midday. From his workshop in the lower palace grounds, Dante could see carriages arriving, noble after noble, summoned by Victor's machinations. He tried to focus on his work, measuring timber for the library shelves, but his hands shook every time he imagined Celestine facing that room full of ambitious men alone. Lady Rosanna found him 3 hours later, her expression grim. She held her ground, but barely. Victor demanded she publicly apologize for the spectacle at the banquet and commit to considering suitable marriage proposals within the month. And? Dante's chest tightened. She refused both. But Master Marchese. Rosanna hesitated. You need to distance yourself from Her Majesty. For her sake. Victor is looking for any excuse to claim she's unfit to rule without a male consort to guide her. For the next week, Dante avoided every place where he might encounter the queen. He worked late into the nights, took his meals alone, and entered the palace only through servants' corridors. It was torture, made worse by the fact that he'd glimpsed something extraordinary in that library, a connection he'd never imagined possible. On the 8th evening he was in his workshop, surrounded by wood shavings and half-finished carvings, when the door opened. Celestine stood there, wrapped in a dark cloak, her hair loose around her shoulders in a way he'd never seen. You've been avoiding me. Her voice was steady, but her eyes blazed with emotion. I was protecting you. Dante set down his chisel carefully. I don't need protection. I need. She crossed the workshop in swift strides. Why did you stop coming to the library? To the gardens where I could see you? Because every moment I'm near you puts your crown at risk. The words burst out of him. Victor is waiting for any excuse. If he can prove there's something between us. There is something between us. Celestine's composure cracked. Do you think I imagined it? The way you looked at me in the library, the way your hand trembled when I touched you? Dante backed against the workbench, but she followed, closing the distance. Your Majesty. Celestine. She was close enough now that he could see the pulse fluttering at her throat. Say my name. This is madness. But he couldn't look away from her. Then let me be mad. Her hands came up to rest on his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath his shirt. I've been dutiful my entire life. I married the man my parents chose. I smiled through his indifference. I mourned appropriately when he died. I've sat on that throne and made every decision based on what's proper, what's expected, what's politically advantageous. Her voice broke. Just once I want to choose something for myself. Someone for myself. Celestine. Her name was a surrender. The secret courtship. The following weeks existed in stolen fragments of time. Celestine and Dante became experts at discretion, meeting in the forgotten corners of the vast palace where even servants rarely ventured. The astronomy tower became their sanctuary. At midnight, when the court slept and the guards changed shifts, Dante would climb the narrow stairs to find Celestine waiting among the dusty telescopes and star charts. There, surrounded by maps of constellations, they created their own universe. Tell me about your childhood, Celestine said one night, nestled against Dante's chest as they sat on the tower floor, his jacket spread beneath them. Flower dust and early mornings, Dante murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. My father was a baker. I'd wake at dawn to the smell of bread. He wanted me to inherit the shop, but I kept sketching buildings in the margins of his recipe books. Celestine tilted her head to look up at him. When did you know you wanted to be an architect? There was a cathedral in our district. I'd watched the light through the stained glass, how it changed the entire feeling of the space. I realized buildings could make people feel things. Peace, joy. I wanted to create that. His hand moved to cup her face. When did you know you could be more than what they expected? When my husband died and everyone assumed I'd crumble. Her voice was soft but fierce. The council wanted to install a regent. Victor practically had his coronation planned. But I'd been watching, learning. I knew more about governing than any of them realized. So I stood before the parliament and gave them a choice: accept me as their queen, or watch this kingdom fall into civil war over succession. She smiled. They accepted. Dante kissed her, slow and deep, savoring the taste of her strength. Lady Rosanna became their unlikely ally and guardian. She'd appear in doorways with subtle signals. A handkerchief in her left hand meant the corridors were clear. Her right hand meant danger approached. She arranged for Celestine's schedule to include private meditation hours and personal correspondence time that were actually rendezvous with Dante. Why are you helping us? Dante asked her one dawn in the secret garden, as Rosanna kept watch while he and Celestine shared their last moments before the palace awakened. Because I've served Her Majesty since we were girls, Rosanna said quietly. I've never seen her truly happy until now. That's worth protecting. The secret garden became another refuge, an overgrown courtyard forgotten during the last renovation, accessible only through a hidden door in the queen's private chambers. Surrounded by wild roses and jasmine, Celestine and Dante would meet at dawn, before the court stirred. "I love watching you in the morning light," Dante said one morning as Celestine sat on a stone bench, her hair loose and uncombed, wearing a simple dressing gown instead of her royal finery. "Because I look human instead of like a queen?" She pulled him down beside her. "Because you look like yourself." He kissed her temple, her cheek, the corner of her mouth. No performance. Just Celestine. Their physical intimacy deepened with each meeting. In the astronomy tower, Dante would unlace the endless buttons of her gowns, kissing each new inch of revealed skin. Celestine's hands learned the landscape of his body, the scars from workshop accidents, the muscles built from years of physical labor, the way he shivered when she kissed the hollow of his throat. "I want all of you," Celestine whispered one night, her body pressed along the length of his on the tower floor, desire and emotion tangled together. "You have all of me," Dante promised, his hands trembling as they explored her curves. Every piece, every breath. They became reckless in their need for each other, stealing kisses in shadowed alcoves, meeting in his workshop after court functions where Celestine would arrive breathless and aroused, and Dante would lift her onto his workbench, swallowing her gasps with deep kisses as his hands slid beneath her skirts. But Victor's shadow loomed over their happiness. He began appearing unexpectedly in corridors, his eyes sharp and suspicious. He questioned servants about the queen's whereabouts and started mapping her daily routine. The danger became real when Dante overheard a conversation in the palace wine cellar. He'd gone to retrieve materials stored there and heard voices echoing from behind the wine racks. "The queen's authority weakens daily." Victor's voice was unmistakable. "She's distracted, making emotional decisions. The noble houses are ready to support a motion for forced marriage, for the stability of the realm, of course. And if she refuses?" Another voice, Lord Pemberton, one of the older nobles. "Then we declare her unfit to rule alone. We'll install a regent council. I've already drafted the documents." Victor's laugh was cold. "Either way, within a month, I'll have access to the throne." Dante's blood turned to ice. He waited until the voices faded, then ran to find Celestine. She was in her private study, reviewing trade agreements, and looked up in alarm when he burst in. "Victor's planning a coup," Dante said urgently, closing the door. "He's gathering noble support to force you into marriage or remove you from power entirely." Celestine's face drained of color. She stood, pacing to the window. "I knew he was ambitious, but an actual coup. Celestine, I'm the weapon he's going to use against you." Dante's voice was anguished. "If he can prove we're together, he can claim you're compromised, unfit to rule. I have to leave the palace. Maybe leave Astoria entirely." "No." Celestine whirled to face him, her expression fierce. "I won't lose you. And I won't let Victor steal my crown." "Then what do we do?" Dante moved to her, taking her hands. "Because I won't be the reason you lose everything you've fought for." Celestine's eyes blazed with determination. "We fight back. Together. Victor thinks I'm weak because I'm a woman, because I dare to feel something real. We're going to prove him wrong." She pulled Dante into a fierce kiss, part desperation, part defiance. When they broke apart, her mind was already working. "I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" "With my life," Dante promised. "Good." Celestine's smile was sharp as a blade. "Because we're about to gamble everything." The public declaration. The summons to the emergency court assembly came 3 days later. Every noble house in Astoria was required to attend. It was the kingdom's highest formal gathering, used only for matters of critical importance. Dante received no invitation, which meant Victor intended this to be the execution of Celestine's reign. Lady Rosanna found Dante in his workshop that morning, her face pale. "He's forcing her hand today. He has signatures from 12 noble houses supporting a motion to establish a regent council unless she agrees to immediate marriage negotiations with him." "How many houses does he need?" 15 out of 25 for a majority. Rosanna's hands twisted together. "He'll get them. The nobles are convinced she's too emotional, too young, too female to rule alone." "Where is she?" "In her chambers. She won't see anyone, not even me. She's been locked in there since midnight." Rosanna's voice cracked. "I think she's preparing to abdicate rather than marry Victor." Dante's heart stopped. "No. She wouldn't. What choice does she have? If she refuses Victor and loses the vote, they'll remove her by force." At least abdication lets her keep some dignity. Dante grabbed his jacket. I need to see her. You can't. The guards have orders. I don't care about orders. Dante was already moving toward the door. Tell me how to reach her private chambers without going through the main corridors. Rosanna hesitated only a moment before pulling a key from her pocket. The servants' passage behind the kitchens. Third door on the left leads to a staircase. But Dante, if you're caught. I know. He took the key. Thank you. He found Celestine standing at her window, still in her nightgown, staring out at the kingdom she was about to lose. She didn't turn when he entered. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly. Neither should you. Dante crossed to her, placing his hands on her shoulders. Not giving up. Not surrendering to Victor. What else can I do? Her voice broke. If I fight and lose, they'll drag me from the throne. If I marry Victor, I become a puppet. If I abdicate, at least I choose my own fate. There's another option. Dante turned her to face him. We prove you don't need Victor or any of them. We show the kingdom that you're not just capable of ruling alone, you're already doing it brilliantly. How? Victor has the nobles. But does he have the people? Dante's mind raced, pieces falling into place. For the past 3 months I've been working on something. Infrastructure plans. Improvements to the water systems, expansion of the market districts, new housing for workers. I was going to present them to you privately, but what if we present them to the entire court? Show them you've been focused on the kingdom's future while they've been focused on politics. Celestine's eyes widened. You have actual plans? Detailed ones? Drawings, cost analyses, projected economic impacts, everything. Dante gripped her hands. Let me stand with you today. Let me show them what you've been building while they've been scheming. If you appear at the assembly with me, Victor will use it as proof of impropriety. Then let him. Dante pulled her close. I'm tired of hiding. Aren't you? For the first time that morning, Celestine smiled. Completely exhausted by it. Then we end it today. One way or another. The grand hall was packed when Celestine made her entrance at precisely 10 o'clock. She wore her full royal regalia, crown, scepter, the ceremonial robes of state. But she wasn't alone. Dante walked 2 steps behind her, carrying a leather portfolio, dressed in the finest clothes he owned. The whispers erupted instantly. Victor rose from his seat, his face triumphant. Your Majesty, this assembly was called to address serious matters of state. A commoner has no place. Master Marchesi is my chief architectural consultant, Celestine said clearly, ascending to her throne. He's here at my invitation to present developments crucial to this kingdom's future. Unless Lord Ashford believes the future of Astoria is unimportant. Victor's jaw clenched. Of course not, Your Majesty, but protocol. Protocol allows the sitting monarch to invite whomever she deems necessary to state assemblies. Celestine settled onto her throne with regal authority. Or have the laws changed without my knowledge, Lord Ashford? Trapped, Victor sat down. Celestine nodded to Dante. His hands shook as he approached the presentation table, unrolling the first blueprint. But then he looked up at the assembled nobles and saw what Celestine must see every day, not monsters, just people. Worried people, uncertain people, people who needed to believe their queen had a vision for the future. Noble houses of Astoria, Dante began, his voice growing stronger. For 3 months, I've had the honor of working with Queen Celestine on comprehensive infrastructure improvements. These aren't just buildings, they're the foundation of economic growth. He presented each plan methodically. The new aqueduct system that would bring clean water to expanding districts. The market expansion that would attract foreign merchants. The housing developments designed for working families, creating construction jobs and stimulating the building trade. Her Majesty didn't commission these projects for glory, Dante continued, watching nobles lean forward with genuine interest. She commissioned them because she understands that a strong kingdom is built on the prosperity of all its people, not just its nobility. While others focused on political maneuvering, your queen was focused on your future. He unveiled the final rendering, a beautiful illustration showing the transformed capital, thriving and modern. Murmurs of approval rippled through the assembly. Victor stood abruptly. Very pretty pictures. But this doesn't address the real issue. The queen's judgment is compromised by her obvious personal feelings for this craftsman. She's proven herself too emotional to rule alone. Emotional? Celestine rose from her throne, and the room fell silent. You call it emotional to care about infrastructure? About economic policy? About the welfare of my people? I call it emotional to seat a commoner at the high table of a royal banquet, Victor shot back. To show public favoritism that disgraces. I seated a talented architect who had innovative ideas for my kingdom, Celestine interrupted. Just as my grandfather seated poets at his table, and my great-grandmother famously consulted with merchants. Or do you suggest they were also too emotional to rule? Several older nobles nodded, remembering the history she invoked. Celestine descended from her throne, standing before the assembly. Lord Ashford demands I marry for the stability of the realm. But I ask you, what stability? Our economy has grown 8% since my coronation. Trade agreements have increased. Crime has decreased. By what measure am I failing that requires a man to rescue me? The measure of propriety. Victor's composure cracked. You've been conducting a secret affair with a commoner. Don't deny it, you've been seen together, alone, inappropriately. I don't deny it. Celestine's voice rang out clear and strong. The assembly erupted in shocked murmurs. Dante's heart nearly stopped. This wasn't the plan. Celestine raised her hand for silence. I don't deny that I value Master Marquesi's counsel, his integrity, and yes, his companionship. I don't deny that in a palace full of people who want things from me, he's the only person who sees me as human first and queen second. She turned to look at Dante, her eyes fierce with love. And I don't deny that I intend to marry him. The hall exploded in chaos. Nobles shouted, some in outrage, others in support. Victor looked apoplectic. This is madness. Victor bellowed. A queen cannot marry a commoner. The noble houses will never accept. The noble houses accepted my rule, Celestine said, her voice cutting through the noise. They'll accept my choice of consort. Master Marquesi will become prince consort, and together we will continue building the future I've already started creating. She walked to Dante, took his hand publicly, and faced the assembly together. I challenge any noble here who questions my authority to govern. I've proven my capability. My personal life is my own. And if anyone believes they can rule Astoria better than I can, let them try to take this crown. The silence was profound. Then from the back of the hall, old Duke Castellano stood. He'd been a friend of Celestine's grandfather and carried immense respect. Your Majesty, he said slowly, your grandfather once told me that the strongest rulers are those who know their own minds. You've shown exceptional vision and courage. If you believe this man is worthy to stand beside you, then I support your choice. One by one, other nobles stood. Not all, Victor and his closest allies remained seated, furious. But enough. More than enough. Those who support Queen Celestine's authority to rule as she sees fit, stand now, Duke Castellano commanded. 17 of the 25 noble houses rose. A clear majority. Victor stood slowly, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. This isn't over, he said quietly to Celestine. Then he stormed from the hall, his allies following. Celestine swayed slightly, and Dante steadied her with a hand at her back. She looked up at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. We did it, she whispered. You did it, he corrected. I just drew the pictures. No. She squeezed his hand. We did it together. The way we'll do everything from now on. 3 months later. The royal wedding took place on a perfect spring morning. The cathedral was packed with nobles, but Celestine had insisted the ceremony be held outside afterward, so the common people could celebrate too. Dante stood at the altar in formal dress that still felt foreign, watching Celestine walk toward him. She wore a gown of ivory silk, simple and elegant, with her grandmother's crown holding her veil. But it was her smile, radiant, free, genuinely happy, that made his breath catch. When she reached him, she whispered, having second thoughts about marrying a difficult queen? Never, he whispered back. Though I reserve the right to complain about royal protocol. The ceremony was traditional, but when it came time for vows, Celestine had insisted they write their own. I vow to rule justly, she said, her voice clear. But I also vow to love honestly. To build not just a kingdom but a partnership. To prove that strength comes in many forms, including the courage to follow your heart. Dante's turn. I vow to stand beside you, not behind you. To support your vision while contributing my own. To love you as both my queen and my partner. And to design you the most beautiful palace wing you've ever seen. Laughter rippled through the assembly. When they kissed, the crowd erupted in cheers. The common people who'd gathered outside the cathedral roared their approval. Celestine had become a symbol, proof that even queens could choose their own happiness. At the wedding feast, as they sat together at the high table, Celestine leaned close to Dante. Any regrets about that day I grabbed your arm? Only that I didn't grab yours first, Dante replied, raising her hand to kiss her knuckles. We have a lifetime to make up for lost time, Celestine said softly. Then let's not waste another moment. Dante stood, offering his hand. Dance with me, my queen? Always, Celestine promised, taking his hand and letting him lead her to the floor. As they danced, the court watching with approval now instead of scandal, Celestine rested her head against Dante's shoulder. Thank you, she murmured. For what? For being brave enough to sit next to me that first night? For believing I was worth the risk. Dante pulled her closer. Celestine, you were never the risk. You were always the certainty. The moment you looked at me across that hall, I knew my life had changed forever. And now? Now we build something beautiful together. He kissed her forehead. A kingdom, a life, a love story worth telling. Outside the palace windows, fireworks began to explode across the night sky, gold and silver bursts celebrating the marriage of a queen who'd chosen love and a commoner who'd become a prince. In the streets, people danced and sang, celebrating not just a wedding, but the promise of a future built on vision, courage, and the radical idea that the heart knows wisdom the mind sometimes cannot see. Celestine and Dante danced until midnight, surrounded by their kingdom, their friends, and the bright certainty of the life they would build together, one brave choice at a time. The end.